My field is migration. So one of the biggest challenges is all of these refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants that have been coming on their own to primarily Central Europe, because primarily they want to be in Austria and Germany and Sweden and those kinds of places. And that has created a major challenge, not only in the ability of these countries to incorporate, to accept them, to register them, to examine their cases, etc., but also to incorporate them. Some countries will do better, other countries are going to do worse. But of course, the fact that this is such a charged situation is threatening to do other things that none of us are happy about, including, of course, the ability of the European Union to have something approaching a common policy toward these newcomers. We now have 3 or 4 different groupings of countries that have taken matters on their own. There's an awful lot of unhappiness between and among member states, and there's an awful lot more unhappiness between member states and the Brussels institutions. It can be an opportunity, but here is where things will have to work out well in order for that opportunity to be had. And there are some countries that are better poised to take advantage of this situation than other countries. For instance, Austria. In the past 5 or 6 years, Austria has made enormous progress in terms of learning how to integrate immigrants, in terms of developing a system that makes sense so that employers can find the employees that they need from the global labor pool, etc., etc. It will take a lot of money and a lot of stick-to-itiveness. They have to really work very hard and do it all right. Germany has a good opportunity to take advantage of it because it's a very wealthy country, and if it throws enormous resources at the problem, it has a chance to actually do well with it. But these refugees / asylum seekers / migrants, by migrants, I don't want to use the American term for that, let's call them irregular migrants. They're there illegally, they don't belong there. Those people will have to go back. And that is a problem because society may resist that. It is expensive, and yet it's absolutely essential. Those people who stay, because they have a right to stay, need to be educated. They need to get to the workforce in the fastest way possible. They need to continue to be trained. And then you're going to have all these virtuous cycles that we're talking about, whether it's the demographics, whether it is contributing in a very substantial way to the economies of the countries in which they settle, etc., etc. A lot of work, a lot of smarts will be required. These are areas in which the European Commission, the European institutions, because it includes the Parliament and includes the Council, have no mandate. They have no authority to touch anything, that has to do with education, the labor market, etc., etc. They can create incentives by essentially throwing money at member states. They can create clearinghouses, which they haven't done. This way, good ideas can be tested and then promoted through the rest of the European Union. But first and foremost, the citizens must trust their governments, and their governments must trust the European institutions. And I think that among the many things that have suffered in the past year or two is that trust. An awful lot of what it is that we know how to do will have to be adapted to the new circumstances. And adaptation, as you know, is very difficult, particularly when you have, for instance, labor market institutions or educational institutions that have deep, deep roots, foundations that go back decades or 100 years. Change is the most difficult thing that any institution can do well in a short period of time. So it will take leadership, it will take money, it will take commitment, and it will take cooperation and learning from each other.